All right, so we're at day 26 now of write every day. I had a nice strong word count of 1,600 words, which is excellent. Again, just one of those things that happens to be a byproduct of just having more time in my day to write, which is obviously awesome. So being 26 days into this, I wanted to sort of reflect a bit on what I want this channel to be about. Like I mentioned when I first started this is just more of a way for me to sort of hold myself accountable in a sense, right? I know if I have to put a video on YouTube every single day, I'm going to have to write. And the notion of me, I guess the public shame of actually missing a day, uh, kind of keeps me basically on my toes in doing that. Even though my channel is obviously not very big, just that the idea basically that I could miss a day and someone could notice it is what's keeping me kind of going forward here. But looking back at the videos I've been posting, and the more I guess instructional videos, the advice videos I've been doing for writing, I'm seeing that this channel needs to take on more of that role as well. And my goal, really, when I look at this channel now, what I kind of want to turn it into is I would like for this channel to be what I would have liked to have seen when I started getting serious about my writing, close-ish to a decade ago. Basically back when I was starting out, back like in like the, 2013, 2014, something like that, when I started getting my writing a bit serious, there was AuthorTube, there were YouTube channels, much like there are today. And while they are great for beginnings, right, they're great for people that are just starting out, I would have liked a channel basically that maybe went a bit deeper with some of the aspects of writing. Videos basically that are about 10 tips to improve your dialogue or 6 things to look for when creating characters. Those are excellent to have, but I'm looking at the channel here. I'm looking at things that I would have liked to have known, or shortcuts basically that might have saved me a little bit of time. And there are deeper aspects of writing, deeper elements to the philosophy of writing that you sort of don't realize, you don't run into until you get a bit further in the process. And so if I could have known this maybe a bit earlier, known some of these items, a bit earlier when I was starting out, I think I would have saved myself a lot of trouble. But when I talk about things like clarity, about you being your own editor, not relying on someone else, that refocuses the idea of what you are doing in the process of writing. So it's not so much about the prescriptive advice of how to do X, Y, and Z thing. It's more about changing the mindset of approaching writing. And so I'm not sure about how far of a reach these sort of videos may actually end up getting. Just because approaching writing in that sense, from changing the framework, what it does is it goes from this very sort of linear process of writing. You go from subjects that are very, very direct, right? That, like I mentioned, the sort of 10 tip style videos. And what you do instead is, with something like the way I'm approaching these subjects, is you start learning more of the principles and theories behind writing, and then you're kind of left to your own device to apply them in a sense, right? Like when I talk about clarity in your writing, as much as I've tried to explain that, and explain kind of the significance of it, it's still a very ethereal concept, right? It's a very abstract sort of concept. It's the same thing when I talked about being very careful of what you put down for on the page, right? The idea of maybe not going for a very quick draft, but taking your time basically and really thinking through what you put down on the paper, because it's going to shape your story. That's very abstract. It's not a very direct thing, but it's a great principle to know. And if you can understand it, and you can basically apply it through your writing going forward. Like, it's one of those things where it can be universally applied, but you have to sort of be willing to think in those kind of conceptual understandings rather than relying upon the more prescriptive, the more linear information that might maybe fix an immediate problem, but won't actually broaden your overall writing. And so I remember some years ago, back when I was training in the martial arts, when I had started out very early on, my sensei was a guy who always taught in principles and never really went into any sort of direct information. So whenever he would teach something, he would always teach the principle. He wouldn't necessarily teach direct techniques. Uh, and it was very frustrating, especially at the start, because at the start basically you can't think so abstract. You want all right, how do I throw a punch? How do I do this move here? But instead, when you're taught the principles, what happens is you don't really know where to start, or you don't really understand. You don't have enough awareness to understand to apply it. Like my sensei would tell me, like he would say, all right, move the target, not the weapon, right? In other words, what he's saying is if someone punches you, duck, right? But the idea of moving the target first, right? That applies to so much beyond just striking it. It can apply to your grappling, to your ground game. It applies beyond just striking. So if you can understand that principle, you can apply it to many different scenarios. And that was what his goal was to get us basically to think in those sort of terms. And so that's the way I want to go forward with this channel as far as teaching is to give more general principles and philosophy on writing, so that way you can apply it to different areas and aspects of it. And so that's my hope for this channel, that I'll have some people that will come on here, and it might be able to assist them with reframing their thought process, and hopefully avoiding some of the later pitfalls you're going to have. Because the reason why the prescriptive channels work so well is, in the beginning, it's good to have that. If you can learn how to write good dialogue, if you can write good characters, write good descriptions in the beginning of your writing is going to go, you're going to move much, much further along, because in the beginning of your writing, that is where the challenge is. It's a very sort of direct way of approaching writing, but that's because in the beginning that's where your challenge is. Once someone has a good foundation in those areas, that's when other things like clarity, like I mentioned in some of these other subject areas I've talked about, come in. They aren't necessarily things that you have to deal with right away, but the earlier you can address them, the easier writing becomes the further you go down the line. It's a bit like learning the fundamentals of chess, but while learning them, also studying some of the more advanced moves. You're not going to be able necessarily to apply them right away, but it's good to know them, so that way, later on, basically you have that foundation, and you can go, you can kind of make that leap. You won't be stuck on that plateau. You won't be stuck basically on that kind of intermediate level plateau. You might be able maybe to start moving up that at a much more granular pace. And so I'm going to leave the video off here at this point, hoping that obviously the channel kind of goes in this direction. It'll be interesting maybe to look back at this like in around maybe day 100, day 200, 1 year mark or something like that, and to see if I was able to sort of go down this area and sort of offer this sort of feedback and on those subjects. But for now, like I said, things are looking good. And as far as the Write Every Day goes, like I said, still staying on track with that. Got a bit of a clustered weekend, but hopefully, like I said, I'll keep my bit of a strong word count going into the work week next week.